Today I worked on a MegaMan.EXE drawing, but instead of going for a dynamic pose, I wanted something more calm and controlled. Um, this was actually a reference. I was doing this based off of a reference, um, like the kind of pose you see in official artwork or in the instruction manual. Excuse me. Where you see the instructions on how to use the game, and also art from the game or the series. The main focus was having his hand resting naturally over the arm cannon. It's kind of interesting. I'm not sure if maybe there's a specific way I could word it, but um, it's an upper body pose. It stops like around the knees, and the direction of his entire body structure and most of his body structure and alignment is based off of the fact that he's resting his hand over his gun. So he has one hand reached over across his body. The handgun arm is, is facing the direction it's going in. The other hand has to reach it. It's causing his body to turn a little bit. His arms crossing. His legs are probably going to have a specific stance, shoulder specific stance. Shading is going to be a certain way based on where the shading's coming from. So yeah, that it completely defines his entire body structure. The fact that he's posing like that. To where it's like the entire perspective of the picture is that I'm drawing of his body is based on him doing that one movement or that one particular thing with his body. His legs are just his legs are just stabilizing him, but that's the reason he's turned like that or whatever, right? So taking all that into consideration with proportions and how everything needs to line up and how everything needs to be perspective wise so that it can look like it's look properly, obviously, or look properly based on the way the character is drawn. And yeah, so the main focus was having his hand resting naturally over the arm cannon, and that ended up being harder than I expected because it's easy for it to look stiff or disconnected. That was mostly with the fingers. I also didn't shade it, or my fault. No, I did. Excuse me. This is something else that, if I remember correctly, this was like maybe a few days ago, but I was gonna, and I'm just recording it now. If I remember correctly, I was gonna leave it unshaded, and these lines that I'm drawing over the cannon, those were like, lines that showed where different shades of the shading would be on it based on how the light is reflecting off of his body and even off of his arm cannon. So getting that correct, getting the fact that it's not exactly a circle, but it's a cylinder. So there's less, if something's a straighter line, I'm not going to go and say it's easier. It depends on the person's level of skill, what they practice more. But if somebody wants a straight line, they could just take a ruler. I don't use a ruler, obviously, as you can see in everything I've recorded. Last time I used a ruler to draw a line was if it was required in a class, when I was like in school or in art classes when I was younger, when we were learning specific things, like a ruler was used to do the technique or the skill properly. And this is not like me taking like art classes for the art I do now. This is like taking art as you're when you're in elementary school and there's general studies and there's music and art classes in like every elementary school in at least in America, and also in high school, like, and then maybe towards the end of high school, like, you can choose whether you want to actually take those classes or not, like, to that type of, but these were some good teachers. um so if pen was sorry, if a ruler was required, that was the thing, especially if, so there, I have a highlight called perspective drills. I have 3 of them on my Instagram, and that was me just doing drills, me drawing perspective and not using a ruler to do it. But when I first learned that drill when I was a kid from an actual art teacher from literally from elementary school, he was teaching us how to draw perspective, right? And it could be done with shapes, but for example, people would like, for example, let's say that we had phases where we're learning how to draw different things, and not even just draw, but other types of art as well. This is a well-rounded art teacher who could teach any type of art. Well, um, one thing that was easy to implement was drawing like a city, or drawing like a city with buildings, um, like a cement concrete type city, right? Um, and adding anything you want, but making the buildings a shape. So like, you first you draw it 2D, so you draw like a bunch of rectangles, a bunch of squares, a bunch of triangles for the roofs. Um, Depends on how you want to structure the building, right? The building can even have multiple layers, but you draw them in 2D first, and then you draw a point on the, well, you draw a point on the paper first. You draw all the shapes in 2D that would make up all the buildings, and then you draw lines, going from the corners of each building. But right now it's only a shape. You draw lines going from the corners into the point wherever it is, and you draw that point. Sorry, you draw the lines lightly. But what happens is you use a ruler to draw every single one of the shapes, unless it was like a circular shape, and then use a ruler to draw the lines back from all the corners, right? And then what you would do is you'd use the ruler to draw the back end of all the shapes. So if it's a square, you draw the square, you draw the line going from the corner, not the corners of all the corners of the square, but it would be the corners that would that could actually attach itself in a straight line all the way to that perspective point. So it's probably like, for example, let's say you draw um, a dot in the corner of your paper, like the right corner, and you draw a square in the middle of your paper. Only 3 of those points is going to be able to connect with the ruler to that point. And then you draw the back end. So you draw the back end parallel to the front end of the square, if that makes sense. So the left side, you draw a parallel line that's lined up with that left side line of the square, and you draw a parallel one on the top, and that would create a 3D square. I don't know how well I explained that, but if you try to do it and follow exactly what I said, it would make sense. You just draw a 3D square, right? So you do that for all the shapes, and you could literally draw buildings in a city like that, and you're as if you're looking down on a city or looking at a city from a certain angle, and you could draw all the buildings out like that, and you just add windows and doors and maybe people. You know, it's completely up to you. That's not applicable here really so much, but these are things you mentally keep in mind after doing those drills a lot. You keep in mind what perspective looks like anywhere, or you try to keep it in mind and just build that as a skill as well. If you can apply this here, you know, you could obviously do that as well. I think this came out more polished in some of my previous drawings even though it's not as dynamic. I tried to keep the structure clean and make everything feel like it flows together. Yeah, it helped me focus more on control and placement instead of just action. And I think that's something